Hello, welcome in. I'm Steen. We're trying a new series here, and it's going to be all about books. Now, the Prydain Chronicles are the best known series by Lloyd Alexander. Fantastic. Jason Headley does a great recap of this and review. I'll put a link to it in the comments below. Yeah, there's no book. My son is reading it. But if you've read the Prydain Chronicles, you may have read this, but have you read the Westmark trilogy by Lloyd Alexander? Now, the Westmark trilogy also falls into Lloyd Alexander's kind of middle grade series of books. He's very famous for writing that age range. He's originally from Philadelphia. He went to college for a little bit, decided it wasn't for him. He joined the army, ended up in France, got married, came back to Philadelphia, started writing. Very prolific writer. So Prydain is very much based in fantasy. Westmark's notable because it's based in a more, um, I would say, industrial era with printing presses, that kind of thing. Kingdom, no magic, none of that. This is your first experience with political and intrigue and rebellion. So, very interesting. So, the Kingdom of Westmark is ostensibly ruled by King Augustine and his queen, but we have Cabarrus, the chief minister. He might as well be called Grand Vizier for all he does. So he's one of those fun guys, and he really doesn't like being told that his cruelty is wrong. So he's been trying to get rid of printing presses and suppressing any kind of rebellion um, all the time, throughout this. Our main character is Theo. He is an orphan in the city of Dorning in the Kingdom of Westmark, and he is currently apprenticed as a printer's devil to Anton, the printer. A printer's devil is the person that would put the print blocks in before printing. So you had to be able to read backwards to be able to put that in correctly, so it would print correctly when you did the printing. Um, Interesting job. That was the apprenticeship he turned out to be really good at. So one day, a as they say it in the book, dwarf, little person, whatever you want to call it appropriately now, but in the book, in the time frame it was written, dwarf named Musket comes in and he wants to have a pamphlet printed for Dr. Absalom, the man he works for. And Theo, being on his own in the shop at the time, says, "Yeah, sure, we can do that. Short turnaround, it'll be fine." Well, Anton comes back and goes, "Yeah, sure, it's fine. We can do that." But while they're getting it set up and printing it, all of a sudden a couple soldiers come in and they take Anton and try to take Theo. Theo cracks one of them over the head and gets out. Anton tells him, "Run." He does. And he later finds out that Anton was shot in the street while Anton was trying to get away. So he is, now on the run. He ends up running into Musket again at one of the inns in town and says, "Dr. Absalom's going to be in trouble. They came after this. They're going to see the tract." And Musket goes, "Get in," throws him in a coach. And a large man comes in and he's like, "I don't know who you are, but, Dr. Absalom is going to be in trouble. Are you Dr. Absalom?" He goes, "Sometimes." Turns out he's a man named Count Labambus. Now, throughout the books, he has a variety of names, and Labambus is assumed to be as close to what his actual name is. We never really find out. So they go off traveling. It turns out that Musket and Labambus are con men. They do all sorts of things. They've done stuff with phrenology, and they print tracts, and they have snake oil and the whole shebang, and they're very entertaining. But at one point, they run across a young girl, uh, very scruffy, very rough around the edges, named Mickle, who happens to be a ventriloquist with perfect memory, some experience as a second story thief, and likes a good pipe, and very little qualms about morally questionable things. They end up traveling with her, and she gets into this oracle priestess thing. They do this whole shebang, and you know, to get money off of people, which also puts them on the radar of the law, which makes things entertaining. And Theo has a very strong sense of what's right and wrong, and after a while, he's like, even being on the run, I can't do this. So he ends up off on his own. He ends up getting ill. He stumbles into the city of Freiburg, and he, while being ill, ends up in the company of a man named Florian. Florian is a scholar, he is a philosopher, and he also believes that the people should be in charge of their government, that democracy is important, and there's got to be a way to have a revolution and get the power to the people. And you meet Florian's children, all of his followers. There's Justin, there's all sorts of characters that you meet and you will follow along with. Meanwhile, while this all this is happening, Dr. Torrance, who is the chief doctor for the royals, has been treating the king. The king has not been well. He suspects the king is being drugged by probably Cabarrus, and he's secretly in love with the queen. He would do anything for her, but he is not going to do anything inappropriate because he is a very moral, upright man. Well, Cabarrus is upset with him, and Torrens goes into hiding, and he ends up getting caught up with some of the people in the capital of Westmark, Marienstadt, which is where Theo eventually ends up with Florian and Florian's children. He runs into Keller, who writes satirical pamphlets under the name Old Kasperl, and he definitely critiques the nobility and everything they're doing. So he runs into to um, to Keller, and they end up working with Florian's people to get rid of Cabarrus and at least restore the king, because Cabarrus's rule is the biggest problem, and that's what how that resolves is the first book. Excuse me, got the wrong one. Westmark. So we get the resolution in there, and I don't want to tell you too much more because people's fortunes change as you go through. The Kestrel is the next book in the series, and this continues to follow our crew of people. The king has died. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Uh, Cabarrus has managed to escape, and actually, he's let go by Theo. It becomes a whole issue, and he convinces the chief minister, the guardian of the king of another neighboring kingdom, that it's time to invade. They're very up. The government is not in great shape. There's people are still upset. Let's go invade. And this is all about what happens with that. Post invasion and upset in the governmental structure goes to the beggar queen. There's upset in the governmental structure. They've changed things, but Cabarrus finds another group. Cabarrus just can't let it go. He wants to be king. He wants to be in charge. And this is all about the ultimate defeat of Cabarrus and his goals. And I really do like how everything wraps up. And none of these books are very thick. I mean, this is 3 books, and the print is a little on the small side because these are old editions. These are the editions I read when I was in grade school. I mean, let's see, copyright is 1981. So yeah, these are the editions I read as a kid, and they're quick reads, but they're dense reads. And it's kind of interesting that Lloyd Alexander had a lot of faith in kids and that they needed to understand some of this political stuff going into their future. I mean, how do you defend democracy if you don't understand how that power derives and what's not democracy and what is a fascism, authoritarianism, um, dictatorship, and how governments can move from a nobility structure, kings, to a democracy and the struggle involved because we're very far removed from that. And he does a fantastic job of keeping some of the complexity but keeping it simple for kids too. So I think it really adds to the critical thinking aspect of it. They are fantastic. The characters are great. He's also not afraid to have characters die. And their deaths are tragic. They but their deaths also come to mean something to those that are left. I highly, highly recommend these. They are tricky to find now. You can find secondhand editions. I am hoping that there will be a resumption of popularity of Lloyd Alexander's work beyond the Prydain Chronicles, which are fantastic, don't get me wrong. But some of his other works are just as fantastic, if not more so. So I would love reissues. But you can hunt these down. Used bookstores, Amazon sometimes sells some old copies. I do highly recommend these. I would love it if they would do e-copies at the very least, because then I could have them everywhere I go. I am one of those people that I have physical copies and e-copies because I don't like being without my books. And sometimes you really need a reminder. So the books are Westmark, The Kestrel, and The Beggar Queen. They're fantastic. I highly recommend them. Go out there and enjoy them. So next time you look at an author, think, but have you read? And hopefully logo to be added soon. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.